Hello, my name is Gary Heigel, and I'm a paramedic. I've been saying that for over 36 years, and I'm extremely proud of the work I've done throughout my career and the fact that that is part of my identity. I've always been motivated by the satisfaction that comes from knowing that the work I do makes a difference in the lives of others. Excellence in emergency medicine impacts people's lives, sometimes in dramatic, life or death ways, and more often it's a matter of simply helping to make a horrible situation a little less traumatic for the victims or the survivors, or to help bring about a better outcome. I've provided emergency medical services on ambulances, helicopters, and airplanes. I've been a field training officer, an operations supervisor, an HR director, and even managed a small ambulance service for several years. About 16 years ago, I realized that I could have an even greater impact on the emergency care provided in my community by shifting my focus to education. This presentation is a very brief overview of my journey thus far towards my goal of becoming a phenomenal educator, and especially about the impact that the Colorado State University Adult Education and Training Program has provided in that process. Before I talk about my educational path, I want to share a little about my personal philosophy towards life, which clearly influences my professional approach as well. In the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, life is a journey, not a destination. Goals are important, and objectives are critical for accomplishing anything in life. But it is equally important, and sometimes really easy to forget, that we must slow down and fully engage where we are right now. Embrace the stage we are in and the growth we are experiencing, and fully appreciate the present. Having worked as a paramedic for over 30 years, I've seen far too many people whose lives were changed, or even ended, before they ever reached some elusive goal that had been their entire focus for years. Whether I'm traveling, exploring, rafting the wild and scenic Rogue River, riding our tandem bicycle with my wife, or working with my students, I strive to fully experience and appreciate the moment and enjoy where I am today, while also remembering where I'm headed. After I had been providing emergency patient care for more than 20 years, I decided that I wanted to teach others some of the things I had learned on the job. I started out teaching an occasional EMS course at my local community college, and after a few years moved into a full-time job as a paramedic program director. This interpretation of the Dunning-Kruger effect in many ways captures the process that many of our students go through, and it also correlates pretty well to my journey so far. I will use it to illustrate several key points in this presentation. What I knew about education when I started teaching was based entirely on what I had experienced as a student. I really knew nothing, and at the start I was painfully aware of that fact. Like many new educators in technical education, I simply replicated what I had seen, and I did my best to figure things out. Over the course of several years, I explored, I read, I experimented, and my confidence grew. I started to consider myself a really good teacher. In retrospect, I can see now how limited my knowledge was at the time, but even then I knew there was more to learn. Unfortunately, I was at that stage where I didn't really know what I didn't know. I started reading and learning about adult education theory and research, and I knew I wanted to learn more, to learn in a way that would provide a thorough understanding, and more importantly, give me the tools to apply these concepts and improve as an educator. I made the decision to pursue my master's degree at Colorado State University, not for better pay, not for a better job, because I absolutely love what I do, but simply because it seemed like the best path forward towards my goal, which was to be really good at doing what I love. Early in the program, I began to realize how much I had to learn. We've all heard the metaphors of just scratching the surface or the tip of the iceberg. I quickly realized that I was only scratching the surface of the tip of a very large chunk of ice. I'm an eternal optimist, so I never found myself in the educational valley of despair that some students reach, where they question if they will ever succeed or if they can do this thing. But I definitely found myself overwhelmed at times with an overload of information. I find McCluskey's theory of margin to be an excellent description of the challenges I have experienced juggling work, family, my own small business, and grad school. I also think it's a good reminder of the things our students face and the limits to what they can bring to their own education because of the loads they are carrying, much of which is unseen by us. Grad school was one example that reduced the time, energy, and resources I had available to deal with other things. COVID-19 came along and increased load for everybody, and in the process reduced the margin that much further for all of us. But within that margin that I had available, I persevered, just as our students do, sometimes with much larger burdens than I have, and I started to climb the other side of this curve. I learned that I was already doing some things really well, but now I had a theoretical understanding of what I was doing and why those things worked. I also started to discover some key concepts that are shaping the way I teach today and will inform the way I teach in the future. I've told students for years that medicine, like life, is complex and ever-changing. Learning, or helping others to learn, is no different. Here are some of the things that make sense to me now, thanks to my journey so far.
Have you ever worked with Dr. Francis?
Oh yeah, he's okay.
Just okay?
Guess who just got reinstated? Well, not officially. Nervous?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. I'll see you in there.
Just okay is not okay.
There are things in life that require better than just okay. Healthcare and education are two great examples. In order to be more than just okay, our educational approach needs to be strategic and intentional. Program development and instructional design were concepts that I only vaguely understood prior to the AET program. I understand now how programs can be designed with appropriate consideration for the target audience, the power structures in place, and the practical and logistical challenges. I also more fully appreciate the importance of a process of assessment and anticipated redesign being built right into the structure from the start. I developed my own visual model of instructional design, which I now have on my office bulletin board, and I've already referenced it on several occasions. This visual helps me to remember the cyclical nature of this process and the need to constantly evaluate not only our students, but also our strategies and the effectiveness of our approaches. Refining and improving our design must be a continual process. In addition to refining and adjusting our design, as educators we need to be ready to adjust our delivery and our expectations to match our audience. I think Vygotsky's zone of proximal development is a simple and powerful reminder of the importance of identifying where a student currently is in order to understand where you can take them. For me, this interpretation is easier to understand and apply. The comfort zone is where most adults prefer to be. It is safe, it is non-threatening, and unfortunately, no learning or development takes place there. The panic zone is a frightening and uncomfortable place. If we take or push our learners so far out of their comfort zone that they're unable or unlikely to be successful, their sympathetic nervous system triggers that fight, flight, and freeze response, and effective learning is highly unlikely. Our goal as educators has to be the stretch zone. We need to stretch learners beyond what is comfortable and beyond what they know, because that is where the learning happens. The challenge lies in recognizing where each learner is in relation to the learning objectives involved, and then adjusting our approach accordingly. Meeting students where they are requires us to get to know our students, to know their stories, and to understand their motivations. Adult learners benefit greatly when we provide them opportunities to have input about what and how they will learn, and when we encourage them to actively participate in designing their learning. For these things to work, our classrooms need to be safe places for all students to share their stories, and as educators it is up to us to foster that environment. One of my key goals is to build classes and programs designed for the success of all students. I'm proud to say that I have never been racist or sexist or homophobic because I was raised to understand and believe that all people are equal and equally deserving of respect. However, over the last few years, through my classes at CSU and through other trainings, I've come to realize that simply not being those things does nothing to change the prevalence of those things in our society. As an educator and a leader in my school and in my industry, I believe I have a responsibility to do more. I've made a personal commitment to strive to be anti-racist and anti-discriminatory and to actively change those things where I am able. My classes and programs will not only teach awareness of the issues around bias and discrimination, but also will model, promote, and hopefully inspire a culture of inclusiveness. Doug Key, my instructor in paramedic school, had a profound influence on my life, an impact I didn't fully appreciate until many years later. In 1984, at our graduation ceremony, he challenged all of us to go beyond taking care of patients and to make the profession of EMS better through our individual contributions. I've since shared that same challenge with 16 graduating classes of paramedics, and I continue to strive to meet it myself as well. My short-term goals revolve around continuing to apply what I've learned. As one example, I've designed an online and hybrid model for paramedic education, which starting next year will expand the geographic reach of my paramedic program and could significantly increase our enrollment. COVID-19 has pushed our hand. Novel approaches that were barely considered a year ago have been implemented and are being improved upon, and many of those things we've learned will become permanent parts of the way we teach. One example of this is a surgical procedure, a cricothyrotomy, just something that prior to COVID was unheard of to think about sending students home to practice this skill on their own. Because we really had no choice in 2020, we created 3D printed models of the trachea, we put together kits, we made videos to demonstrate the skill, and students were sent home to practice, perform, and record their own performance of the video, which we were able to easily verify through video review. We have since expanded that project to include numerous other skills that in the past were taught and practiced only in our lab setting on our campus, and now are realizing that many of these skills can be practiced, performed, and perfected by students on their own if given the appropriate tools. I'm only 6 years away from being eligible to retire, but I feel like I have so much work left to do. My focus is now shifting slightly away from my personal professional development towards a focus on the growth and development of others and on improving the profession of EMS education. I'll continue to mentor my faculty and share what I've learned, and whenever we're able to resume in-person conferences, I'll return to the national scene with an increased focus on teaching the teachers rather than the field providers. And my AET portfolio is being designed with that in mind as a toolkit for my peers. I want others to benefit from the things I've learned at CSU, as well as through my experience. The focus of my portfolio is on tangible skills, strategies, and techniques to apply adult learning theory to EMS education in everyday practice. My long-term goals are not so far away. In 6 years, I plan to retire from my leadership position at the college, but I fully expect to be teaching and learning for as long as I have the energy and the capacity to do so. Travel, online teaching, consulting, and customized education are all possibilities, hopefully all being delivered from my home base overlooking the Sea of Cortez in Los Barillas, Mexico. The AET program has given me more than I expected, and I plan to continue enjoying the journey.